My topic for the American Experience outline um, was student athlete mental health, and my working thesis started with the American experience is currently under attack with a stigma toward mental health. Many athletes are gifted with a great physical ability. Student athletes specifically feel targeted and not cared about enough. In the future, I'd like the American experience to be something where no one feels excluded or any feeling of hopelessness. I want all student athletes to know that there is nothing wrong with getting help. To accomplish this, Americans need to accept that athletes are human and that everyone makes mistakes. Most of the mental health can occur from critics or coaches or the culture around a single play or mistake. And um, I'm just going to start building off of that with my first subtopic, which was um, common mental health disorders with student athletes. And it's just kind of something that I feel like I know that it's really common. It can be common with anybody, but we see it a lot more with student athletes just because of the stress and extra things that they have to worry about, especially college athletes. Like if you're at like a pretty like big college and you're going to be hearing your name maybe on the news or like even just all over like Instagram or something or like whatever. And if you mess up and you see all these like memes and whatnot, and everyone thinks it's so funny, but really it can do a lot mentally to a person. And so my hook starts with under all of the lights and behind the stands, there stands a tall task student athletes face mentally every day. How will you grab, and then I forgot to delete that, but it says, how you grab your peers' attention. And then for inform, I said a student athlete is someone who has to balance a sport outside of school, doing all of the same work as a regular student does. Mental health is something everyone has. It's simply the well-being mentally of a human. Putting them together is the mental health of a student athlete, which in recent studies has been on a decline in America. And we've been seeing it decline even more and more because, for one, social media really plays like a role in this, and then also just going along with coach and athlete relationships, which is one of my other subtopics. And it's just something that like it's just something that we don't really see as much, I feel like, anymore, because if you look at a lot of even I don't like to reference this, but movies and other things, I know that there's one movie, it's called like Rudy, where he actually develops a really good like relationship with his coaches and whatnot. But going off of that, going back to my first subtopic, common mental health disorders with student athletes. So the main two were anxiety and depression. And the first quote I had was the proportion of college students diagnosed with mental health conditions increased from 21.9% in 2007 to 35.5% in 2017. That's over a 10% increase in just 10 years. At that rate, in 2027, they would be at almost about 50%, which is about half of the student athletes in all of college, which is pretty crazy. And that's why I believe something should be done about this. And then to kind of back it up, I said how college athletes may be at even more risk for mental health issues than non-athletes or not non-student athletes. And social support may play an important role on student athlete mental health. And then especially the relationship with coaches, two things I already talked about, but the quote itself speaks pretty loud in just 10 years how much it has changed and not changed for the better. But many kids in college go through a lot of different things. But what the U.S. needs to do a better job at is providing help, especially for the most common mental health disorders that we see in a lot of just younger people, which is anxiety and depression, because a lot of the kids at teenagers don't really know how to cope and there's a lot of things that we have access to now, which makes it even easier over the internet. And then my second quote was, in a major study of college students, 28% of the female and 21% of the male student athletes reported symptoms of depression in the last 12 months. 31% of male and 48% of female student athletes reported symptoms of anxiety. And so, something that I kind of wonder with these studies is how honest were all of the students, because I feel like there's a lot of student athletes who end up like getting bad grades and they think, oh, it's just like I play a sport, like it's whatever, I don't have to have the highest GPA, like I don't have to try as hard as everyone else, I don't have all the time that they have. Like they'll make up excuses, but really something might be going on mentally, like they might have pretty bad anxiety or they could be depressed. And there's a lot of other factors that go into it, like things that go back on at home that you have to worry about now, or trying to perform for like one of your parents or sibling or whoever it may be that's kind of been pushing you. Then there is almost a stigma. I guess there is a stigma around it too, but something I didn't really focus on a whole lot was how can the performance impact you mentally. I just like covered that briefly, but I kind of wish I got more into that. And my second subtopic was stigma around getting help. And then I said, for my first quote was Corgan. So I think that was whoever did, I think it was a college that did this, what's it called, lab or experiment. Asserts that two primary types of stigma exist regarding help seeking: public and self-stigma. Those are the two stigmas, public and self. So public stigma is external and refers to a belief that society perceives seeking help for mental health treatment as undesirable, and individuals who seek help are socially unacceptable. Self-stigma represents an internalization of public stigma in that an individual believes he or she is socially undesirable for seeking treatment. And so a lot of it can be yourself just telling you like, no, I'm fine, I don't need help, like I just don't need to do all this. And the public one is just a lot of people saying like, oh, you're weak, you're a baby, like you just don't want to play, you don't want to do this, something like that. If you are, or like that you have a weakness or you're just weak-minded and whatnot, but they really don't know what could be going on. And then my second one was, one study examined willingness to discuss specific issues in sports psychology consultation amongst athletes from the United States and Japan. This list included 10 options related to performance enhancement as well as various personal concerns. Overall, the top 3 issues were all performance related. So a lot of it is related to how you perform. That goes mentally with an athlete. And based off of my previous experiences, I see this a lot. Like last year, I want to use this as an example. I just was getting really down on myself, and I had a coach that was he definitely wasn't helping and kind of made me lose love for the sport I was playing, basketball. And just because maybe I wasn't doing that good, he would make comments like, oh, did you bring a jump shot today? And little things that would just stick with me and I would think way too much about. And I just hated the sport. I wanted to be done. I didn't want to do anything. I just got really lazy and unself-motivated, and it was pretty bad. But that was kind of a self-stigma. Like, I thought I didn't need any help. I thought I was fine. I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody about this. I'm fine. I can do it on my own. And then my third subtopic was impact on academic performance. So it relates from performance to academic performance, physically to academics. So, however, athletes who are involved in competitive sports as well as academics tend to experience a greater amount of mental strain that has a negative impact on their performance in the field. That was my first quote, and that one just kind of says how this is what I wrote. The impact playing a sport and doing school has on academics is greatly underestimated. Working around practice and learning time management in a hard way has a lot of different effects on the brain, because something that I also notice is when coaches are on you about every little thing and you feel like there's only so much that you can do, and then you have to take that every day and just try not to mess up, try to be perfect, so then you don't get yourself in trouble with that, and then you have to bring it to school the next day and so on and so forth. It really can take a toll on the human brain, and it just causes a lot of stress and releases serotonin and a bunch of other chemicals that go into the brain, and it's just not good. And then something for propose, I said we need to be more focused on how we create a positive mental health along with how to get help when it's bad. We only focus on when it's bad and not enough on how to improve it. And for my subtopic for this was working for a positive mental health. So one thing that I think should happen is making it easier for student athletes to get their help. But I also think we need to focus more on the aspect of creating good mental health. And I had been reading, my next quote will come from this too, or one of them. But I think it was like Norway, over in that area. Those countries tend to have a greater or a lower percent of student athletes who have mental health problems, or just even teens. And so the US is actually really high for that. And I find that a problem that we don't really focus on enough. And something like, I feel like this is a problem that really should be taken more seriously, even though we have made steps. But you look at all these other countries that don't have the same problems we have, and you wonder why. And I found out that a lot of them put in more money, time, and effort to help their youth and guide them up, because a lot of the times right now our youth will get they'll just get scolded at for like, oh, they're always on their phone, they don't know how to talk, they don't know how to do this, that. And so there's a lot of just criticism that the youth gets now in the US, but you look at the other countries and they try to help them up and build them up, which I think we should try too. But it's hard in our society. And then a quote I had is, it is important that focus should be given on the mental health of student athletes. While efforts have been directed towards reducing the mental distress experienced by students, there is comparatively lesser attention paid towards enhancing their mental health. And then my second one was, regardless of the game's outcome, Coach Saban enforces a 24-hour rule. 24 hours to dwell on the game just played, the good and the bad, then they have to let it go, which I really like. And I think that every athlete should do, regardless of what sport it is. You can think about what you did good, what you did bad in your game or match or whatever, and you should just have 24 hours to think about it, see what you can improve on, see what you did good to keep doing. But then you just got to forget about it, because if you're constantly thinking about it, like I even did this last year, it really can make you play worse, and then that it just is a downhill slope, and you don't want to get caught in that, because it's not a fun place to be. And then one thing I would work on, as I am a student athlete, is focusing on the coach-player relationship mainly, but then also we should have a program specifically for student athletes and have somewhere where they can talk to one another and really connect on a deeper level. Yes, having friends is helpful. Being a student athlete, they can relate. But I feel like the community of student athletes, there should just be like, it should be easier to talk about what we need to talk about, because I feel like a lot of us we're afraid to talk about like our mental health, especially like from my friends. I don't think I've ever talked to them like about their mental health and how they are and like how school's going for them. But I know me, I've been in a pretty bad spot before, but I just never really even talked to anybody because I just felt that stigma, like I shouldn't. And then conclusion, my next steps for research are to continue asking questions and finding my own answers, because many things are still yet uncovered about mental health and student athletes. Something else to note is how long practices are or how busy athletes can get. I think that that right there takes a big toll mentally on athletes. So kind of what I'm getting at is practices. I don't really love practices. I can't lie. I don't think anyone does. But sometimes having like a 4 hour practice, like 7 hours worth of practice, or 2 a day practices, that is just something that mentally a lot of kids will just give up and quit. And it can really just be a lot to like have and take in. But I think that I should do a little bit more research on that and see if it actually does have an effect. But that's just kind of what I was thinking about after I got done with my research. One place I can look for more research is Farmington or in a college or just even on the internet. Some related things I could research is turf or grass fields better, because I have noticed so many more torn ACLs and broken backs, which is weird because I just talked to my dad about this and he was like, we never had that problem where like kids were breaking backs like they do now. I had like 4 teammates in the past year break their back. I've had like 6 with torn ACLs, like 2 this year. And it's just kind of crazy how common it's become, but it used to not be that common. And then my works cited is right here in alphabetical order. Everything. I watched the video. There. That is my video. Kind of long.